Welcome to Sparks 1524. I'm Nathaniel Miller. On this edition of Just My Thoughts, it's time to talk about what evil can happen when good people do and say nothing. Recently, my home state here in Florida has been the center of a media kerfluffle, which is a nice way of saying a media shitstorm, to put it bluntly, about the so-called and hilariously mislabeled Don't Say Gay bill. In reality, this is the Parental Rights and Education Bill, and contrary to what you've probably heard on the news if you watch 90% of the news, this bill does not make it illegal for teachers, administrators, parents, or private citizens such as myself to say gay, which is really good considering I am gay. Straight up, I am a gay man who stands firmly against the grooming and targeting of children by so-called gender identity activists. I have a vested interest in seeing young people grow up, young people in the LGBT community grow up treated with respect and dignity exactly the way my generation was not. I grew up in the closet. The only gay role model I might have had was Jeffrey Dahmer or the creepy villains from the James Bond movie Diamonds Are Forever. Great movie, by the way, and I have no problem that those villains were clearly gay. Gay people are human. Some gay people are just as evil as some straight people. Many gay people, myself included, are decent human beings who just want to live our life, be left alone, to have our own families if we're lucky enough to find a partner. So I have a vested interest in seeing young people in the LGBT community treated with human dignity and respect. However, there is a far cry from teaching a 7-year-old in first grade that it's impolite, it's actually downright mean, to make fun of somebody if they see two men or two women holding hands. There's everything entirely appropriate with teaching children of that age that even if they don't understand the relationship they're seeing, it's mean and rude to make fun of them. Teaching basic dignity and respect, teaching basic courtesy, that's fine. I have no problem with that. But teaching a 7-year-old, an 8-year-old, a 9-year-old that if you have boy parts but you feel like a girl, then you're actually really a girl. And that having girl parts doesn't make you a girl, it makes you whatever you want to be. Kids at that age have no idea what the hell you're talking about. Children want to, by nature, please the adults that are in authority over them. Not all kids. Some kids are hellions. We all know that. But the majority of kids, myself included, most of the kids I grew up with, especially when we're very little, which for me was about 5 feet ago, want to please the adults in the room. That's natural. It is incumbent on the adults in the room to therefore not use those children to advance a political agenda that benefits the adult, not the kid. Biological fact, since we follow the science in this country, biological fact, the prefrontal cortex up here, which is the main judgment center of the human brain, does not hit maturity until we're in our mid-20s. The cerebellum, another part of the brain, helps regulate thought processes, which is also important for making sound judgments. It also doesn't reach maturity until our mid-20s. This is why we don't let people drive cars until they're 16. We don't let people drink until they're 21. This is why we don't let people under 18 join the military. Now, yes, you could be 17 and get a waiver, but that's rare. It's because these are major events, major decisions and actions that could have extraordinarily negative consequences extending for decades through a person's life if they make a bad judgment call. Those children are still children. Even teenagers, and I'll call them kids to differentiate them from little children, don't have fully developed judgment centers yet. It's not it's not a diss on the kids. It is not an insult to them. It's biology. It's simple biological fact. Another fact of biology. Gay people, well, LGBT people, those of us who identify as LGBT, I'm gay, straight up, not bi, I'm gay. Those who are bi and gay, and even trans, we're maybe about 7, possibly 9% of the human population. That's it. Heterosexuals are over 90% of the population because that's how our species survives. Sexual reproduction needs two genders, two sexes to work. That's how we do it. Now, there are a lot of debates about homosexuality. I personally am very sure I was born this way because as soon as I started hitting puberty, I noticed boys. I had to make myself try to notice girls, but I just noticed boys. I also know what it's like to live in the closet. Like I said, growing up in high school, especially, I had to keep my mouth shut because being gay was really not good. I spent 20 years in the Navy, career I'm very proud of. But for 15 years of it, I had to hide a very large part of who I am because I wanted to keep my career. That, however, does not even give you the shadow of justification for me to walk into a classroom and tell a 5-year-old, a 6-year-old, a 7-year-old, well, just because you have this physicality doesn't mean you're actually a boy. Or just because you have that set of parts between your legs, that doesn't mean you're a girl. It just means you might have accidentally gotten the wrong biology, but we can fix that before you ever hit puberty. We don't let people make life altering decisions like joining the military until they're cognitively able to understand the ramifications of that. Why are we suddenly going to allow children who don't even have an idea of a time span longer than a couple hours to make decisions that will affect and possibly destroy decades of their life? Here's another way of looking at this, especially where the trans thing is concerned. I have wrestled with a lot of mental health issues over the years. A lot of it was, it still is PTSD related because of the things I went through in the military. I have only ever been, quote unquote, air quotes, cured of one, and that's called body integrity identity disorder. For a very long time, I actually was convinced my left leg needed to be amputated. By the way, this is the first time this video I'm ever publicly putting this out. Only a few close friends, my family doesn't even know I went through this because, well, when I was going through it, all those years I lived with it, I knew it was not right. I knew it was not healthy, but I was absolutely convinced my left leg needed to be amputated. Now, in today's permissive culture, there's a lot of activists out there who would say, well, then find a doctor and have them amputate your leg so you can live your life fully. Yeah, live my life fully by intentionally disabling myself. That is sick. That is not normal. That's all one of the few things I've ever actually, like I said, been cured of because through a lot of therapy, a lot of working out why I ended up in that mentality, I was able to get out of it. And I'm very glad I have two legs. And yet, as soon as I say, as a 7-year-old child, I want to be a girl, it's okay for me to take hormone blockers that change how my body develops for the rest of my life, which, considering our lifespans are hitting 90 to 100 years, that's a long ass time. These are not rational people making these decisions. These are activist groomers targeting your children for a political cause. They want political power. Again, heterosexuals have most of the political power because, frankly, there's a whole lot more of you than there are of us. Watch TV, you'll think the gay population is about 50 to 60% of the actual human family. We're not. We're 7%, maybe 10, if you want to stretch it. There is no justification for targeting children. These activists are screeching about the parental rights and education bill here in Florida and similar legislation in other states because it prevents them from using the state's power to coerce families into letting their children be used as political pawns. It's a recruitment campaign, and it's a dirty little secret, but it is an active, whether they realize it or not. And many of these activists, that's the nefarious thing about this. Many of these activists, I don't think they actually realize they're trying to recruit kids. But when you have a 7-year-old, an 8-year-old, those minds are impressionable. They can get twisted. They can get diverted simply because they're trying to make the adult in the room happy. And since all the kids in the room are trying to make the adult in the room happy, all the kids are agreeing to what the teacher says because that's what little kids do for the most part. There is no discussion, there is no cognitive ability happening on the part of the children. They are being manipulated when they're at that age. Now, when they're 12, 13, 14, and can start having rational discussions because they're learning rational thinking, whole different story, and that's a different conversation. This narrative that half the population is suddenly discovering it's LGBT is nothing but fashion. It's a fad. It's the trend going right now. Trust me, I'm a gay man. There aren't that many of us around unless I come to an urban center where historically marginalized small populations tend to gather. And my life's a little more tricky because I don't like cities. I don't put them down. I enjoy visiting them, but I'm a small town kind of guy. Pensacola, my home city now, is the biggest city I ever want to live in. And one day I hope to return to a smaller, more rural setting. Well, I got to realize as an adult with agency, that means I'm going to have trouble finding a partner because there aren't a lot of gay guys that go live in the rural areas. It's just a fact of life. Okay, fine. But that doesn't give me the right to walk into a classroom and start telling kids that they really might be gay. And just because mommy and daddy say this, mommy and daddy might be wrong because they're culturally tied up into things that they were taught, but they don't really know what's happening. That's evil. There's no other word for it. That is evil because you're twisting a child to your agenda for a political purpose. And as an American citizen, as a Navy veteran, as an uncle of several nephews and nieces, and as a human being, I find that offensive. I find that sick. As a gay man, I find that a complete betrayal of everything we have fought for since Stonewall. If I ever adopt a kid and I send him to school, I damn well don't want some activist in the guise of being a teacher walking and telling my kid all kinds of things that I don't believe in and that I think are wrong. And that's exactly what's happening. Imagine how these activists would squeal if the state used its power to force all children in school to learn that homosexuality is wrong. What if the state used its power to force all children to learn that Judaism is the only true religion, or Islam, or Christianity? How would these activists squeal if the state used its power to force children to think that the Democrat Party or the Republican Party were the only real parties and the others were all traitors? We would go nuts. We would go batshit crazy and beat down the doors with the proverbial pitchforks, because that is evil. That is manipulating children to satisfy the agenda and the ego of an adult. In other words, those are groomers targeting children. Every part of the human family has great people in it. Every part of our human family has people that suck. That doesn't give an activist the right to manipulate an entire school system to ensure the junior population of below age children, prepubescent children, come out the way the activists want. That activist is not freeing the kids. That activist is recruiting the kids into that activist's way of thinking. That's not education, that's training. That's indoctrination. And to do that to children is no different than what Jeffrey Epstein did to all those young women that he and his people abused, when those women thought that they had a legitimate shot at a good job. Look what happened to them. Same thing with what Harvey Weinstein did. There's no difference between those kind of pieces of dirt grooming people to use and these activist groomers targeting children in a classroom. I'm a gay man, but I'm going to stand against this little part of the LGBT community and all the allies that think these people are right, because they are sick. They're targeting children for their agenda to make themselves feel better. And that is no different than the person who actually actively sexually abuses a child to get their own jollies at the expense of the child. The only thing evil needs to succeed is good people to do and say nothing. And the greatest evils we do to our own species are under the mask of righteousness. Well, look how self-righteous these activist groomers are, because they think with a religious fervor they're doing the right thing. Sadly, some of them truly believe it. But the reality is, they're trying to indoctrinate and train children because they want to recruit for a political cause to give themselves power. An unpopular opinion, and one that goes completely against the narrative, especially from a member of the LGBT community. But as a 50-year-old man, I don't want to see children groomed. I don't want to see children harmed. During my career in the Navy, I was a photographer. For a long time, I actually worked with NCIS, because before everything went digital, they called us, since we had the film cameras, we had to come and photograph things. I have filmed and photographed victims of domestic violence, victims of sexual abuse. I have seen what it does. This is no different. Well, those are just my thoughts on the issue. As always, if you think this video is worthwhile, please like and share it. If you think this video sucked but you stayed with me this long, I thank you. You can get me through the comments here. If you want to read a little more about this, my written blog, my written column on my blog is also linked below in the description. Please feel free to check it out. Have a great day. Be aware of what somebody else is trying to foist on your children and why. Are they doing it for the child's benefit, or are they trying to benefit themselves? It's a hard thing to stand against the crowd, but you know what? Your children will thank you when they're grown adults who are able to make healthy decisions for themselves, whatever those decisions are. So, again, thanks for your time. Until we meet again, have a great day and go and do some great things.